So yeah, now talking about the groups, the functional group, that is like the it's in zoology class we learned, that is aldehyde group and ketone group. So I'll be telling you that what is mean by the aldehyde group and ketone group in the biochemistry and especially. So firstly I'll be making the aldehyde structure. So this is the structure of aldehyde. Now there will be the series of carbon as so that what is aldehyde basically means. The aldehyde basically a functional group which is like used in the biochemistry. What is aldehyde, like how we can like identify that it is a aldehyde group or ketone group. So aldehyde group will be like with the first carbon, with the first carbon, the attachment, the attachment of oxygen with double bond added. Okay, so basically the aldehyde group means that for the first carbon, from first carbon it is like with the first carbon the carbon is attached with the two oxygen, double bond of oxygen with one oxygen, and double bond is having with carbon number 1. So if there is like any group you can say like that there is like with the first carbon of with the first carbon there is the attachment of oxygen with the double bond, it will be like identification of the double bond with carbon number 1. So if you are like seeing that there is any compound, or you can say like there is any like group, so to identify the aldehyde group is the to see that if there is the bond of oxygen with the carbon or in one carbon number 1, especially in carbon number 1, so it will be aldehyde group. So aldehyde group are like the galactose, for example the glucose, the galactose and fructose are the isomers. So the galactose is also the isomer of glucose. So they both are having these kind of structure, and in these structures, so the carbon 1 is like having the double bond of the oxygen of double bond will is like with carbon number 1. So it is the identification of the aldehyde. So now talking about the ketone group, the ketone group is like there is the firstly I'll be making the structure to identify the ketone is okay, so on. So ketone is basically, firstly I'll be writing that what is ketone is also a functional group like aldehyde. So with the carbon number 2, there is carbon number 1. Carbon number 2, the oxygen is having double bond. To identify the ketone group is like here I told you that the identification of aldehyde is that the oxygen is having the double bond with the carbon number 1, but here the oxygen is having the double bond with carbon number 2, not 1. If 1, then it will be like the aldehyde group, or if there is like carbon number 2, so it will be like having the ketone group. So like what's the example of ketone? Ketone is having the example like fructose. Basically the lactose and fructose are the isomer of glucose. So like the glucose and galactose is having these kind of structure, they are having the oxygen with double bond of with the carbon number 1, but fructose is having the another functional group which is ketone, and in fructose there is double bond of oxygen with carbon number 2, not 1. So to aldehyde you can say that are also called the aldose, and the ketone are also called the ketones. So today we learn about the aldehyde and ketone group.